All right, hello again. So in this video, we're going to go over some more Flexbox stuff. I'm not sure exactly what order you're seeing these videos in. So just a little description about this file. So we're going to go over Flexbox item properties. You might have also seen things about Flexbox containers and aligning in there and Flexbox in general. But like I said, I'm not sure which order these will be in. So a little background on the file. So we're going to be talking a little bit about ordering elements inside of a Flexbox, individual items, and then aligning individual items mainly or mostly along the cross axis, and then using margin on items too. So we're starting with these boxes, right? And the gray box is the container, and the blue boxes are the items. So you can kind of see they're just stacking up. They're just divs right now. So if you look down in the code, there's just a bunch of divs. Here's an example. Here's the first one. It has a class of container. And then there's 5 flex items in it. They have flex item class on the items just so we can style them a little bit. And then there's a container class on the outside div. And then the classes that actually apply the specific styles are already on here. So you're not adding those. Again, I kind of did way too much for you guys. You guys have almost nothing to do here, but we wanted to, let me, format this document. I guess it's going to leave it that way. I wanted to make it kind of simple. So we have a bunch of some classes here, and we're just going to fill in the CSS property and the value that we're going to use for each of these. They're showing up in orange in VS Code here because VS Code is like, why do you have all these empty styles? Because we haven't put them in yet. So a couple things to start with. So you may have seen this before, but we need to make a flex container, obviously. We're using Flexbox. So to do that on the container class, and it's line 23 on mine. Yours might be different, but it's probably the same, but don't quote me on that. And I'm going to say display flex. So just by doing that, and there was a comment there to tell you to do that. Just by doing that, you can see that a lot of things change. They started going left to right? So once you say display flex, you get a flex direction of row, which makes them into a row. They were a column, right? Because they're block elements by default. They stack up vertically. That's what block elements do. But now they're flex items. They're not block elements anymore. So they go horizontal by default. And you can change that with flex direction, which again is in another video, I believe. So we added display flex. Now these are all flex containers, and then the items inside are called flex items, right? And then to see this, you can see these all kind of look the same right now. And so we want to make these, and they're all stretched, right? So all these items are stretching across the cross axis. Remember, a little review here. The cross axis this is from CSS Tricks, the holy grail of Flexbox property listings, going up to basics and terminology, and there's that illustration that we always use. I like that it kind of looks like it was drawn by hand. But remember, you've got a main axis here, and you've got a cross axis here, and so the main axis goes left to right by default. You can change the direction or make it vertical if you want. And then the cross axis is just perpendicular. So whatever the main axis is, the cross axis goes perpendicular to it, if you remember that from geometry class. I think that's perpendiculars from geometry, right? And then you've got the main size and the cross size. You don't really have to know that too much, but you do have the main start, main end, cross start, and cross end. And then you got flex items inside the flex container, right? So everything inside of it becomes a flex item. Just as a refresher. Hopefully you knew that already, but maybe you didn't. Okay, so to see some of these things, we're going to say align items flex start. That is you can even copy it if you want to be super lazy. I'll be super lazy. Or smart. Is it smart or is it lazy? So as soon as I do that, I said align items flex start. That is for a property for the container. This video is about properties for the items, but what that did was now they're not all stretched, right? And so we can see a little more about alignment, because we are using this to align inside the box in the cross axis, which is this way. This will make more sense when we do this here in a second. Okay, so that is good on that. I think we're good the rest of it. These are set by default. each item is set to flex 0, 1 auto, which is the default. That is not to grow. It can shrink, and auto means let the content determine the size. That's why this is bigger than that, right? Because the content is bigger. So always remember that with Flexbox. That's why it gets a little bit tricky, but flexible, get it, flexible, is that the content does affect how things lay out. So sometimes it gets a little hard to predict, but you got to get used to it. Okay, order. So that is the one up here. So order, by default, Flex items lay out in the source order. That means the order they are in the source code. But the order property can control the order in which they appear. The default is 0. So everything by default is 0, and then they just go in the normal order. If you have something that's higher than 0, and I don't think you can use negative numbers like you can with z-axis, but if you have something that's higher than 0, it's going to be later, right, in the order. So I have a couple of, and remember that I have these classes already on here. So let me just make sure you guys see that. So the first one has a class of order 3, and the second one has a class of order 2. That's this one and this one and this one. So we're just going to put in the actual values here, and you got to click inside and then start typing. I know it's hard. And then you got to say order, and then we're just going to put 2. So these class names, like maybe you saw this in an earlier video, the class names kind of look like the CSS property and value, but they're not. These are just made up, right? But they are pretty close to what it looks like to kind of help you a little bit. So the actual CSS property is order, and then the value is 2. So what happened was this one now has an order of 2. All these are still 0, so it goes to the end. It doesn't put it in the second order. That's what's a little confusing, at least to me anyway. It's not like it makes it second. It just makes it later than the rest. And the rest are all 0. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 2, it puts it last. I know it's a little confusing. Let's try this one. Let's go order 3. 3. And so now this one has an order of 3, and this one has an order, let me zoom in so you guys can see here a bit. This one has an order of 3, and this one has an order of 2, and these are still 0. So 0, 0, 0, 2, 3 puts them in that order. So it is a little bit confusing, like I said, as far as like, well, if I put 3, shouldn't it be third? It's not really how it works, unfortunately. That might be kind of cool, but there's probably reasons for all this. I just don't know what they are sometimes. Okay, so let's do align self. So all these are align self. And so there is align items, which we already did. That's for the whole box, right? And that's along the, that's for the container. These are for individual items. So it's like self-individualism. Maybe it's narcissistic. I don't know. But this allows the default cross-axis alignment. So remember, this is cross-axis for one of the specified items to be overridden for individual flex items. So basically, you're overriding the align items and other things with these, right? So the options are the same as they are for align items, but you're applying them to individual items. So the default is, I don't know whether there's just an I there. The default is align self stretch. Should we fix this? I'll know if you watch the video if we fix it. Let's see, align self. Yeah. There, I fixed the S in default is. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so maybe I should do that as a test to see if you watched it. So we're gonna do the default, which is stretch, right? So we're gonna say align self, and then not start, but stretch. So since we set this first one, and remember, these are all on individual items. So let's see where that one is. Yeah. So this one has this class on it called align self stretch, and that's the only one it's on. So it's on individual items. It's not on the container. You got to remember that part. So since that is the default, so now this stretches across all the way across the cross axis. This is the cross axis. Remember? This is the cross axis. So it stretches all the way across. That is the default. So that's why things will be the full kind of height by default if you don't tell it to do something else. Yeah, so there you go. So that's individually aligning and making that one stretch. Let's go to the next one, which is align self flex start, which is the kind of the default. So let's say align self flex start. So did we see anything change? Not really. They are all aligned to the flex start, which is here, right? So this is flex. This is flex start on the cross axis. This is flex end, right? Or yeah, this is end, right? So let's do this end when you'll see the difference. We didn't really see anything happen because that was kind of boring, right? Let's do align self flex end. Aha, now we see some difference, right? So this is applied only to this guy here, this little box, right? So this one says align self flex end. So the rest are all still aligned up here, but this one now, since it says align self flex end, it goes by itself, all alone, lonely, down to the end, right? So flex start, flex end. And you can probably figure out we can do center. So let's do align self center. And now this one is centered. So this individual item is centered, but these are still up at flex start. You can also do, this is gonna be pretty fast. We can also do align self baseline, which I'm like, I don't know why you would use that, to be honest, but it is one of the possibilities. And by the way, on these videos, I'm not giving you every possible value. There's more. It would be very, very long, even longer than they already are, sorry to say. But so I'm going to say align self baseline, and this one's kind of interesting because you're like, what does that mean? So the item is aligned to its baseline regardless of the container's align items. And I say, look at the bottom of the text lines on this one. So if I zoom in here, look at the bottom of the 2, which is the baseline of this line of text, and the bottom of the S or the its. They line up. I think they line up. What's the? Yeah, they do. So that is what baseline does. Yeah, and I haven't had that one come up, but that is what it does. All right, so that is the align self, and there's more, but those are the ones that you might see. I did want to throw in here, since it's on an individual item and not on a full container, you can use margin with Flexbox. So you can use it to separate an item. So in this case, we're going to use margin right auto to create space between the first item and the rest. So this is kind of like a navigation bar, right? Maybe you want a logo on the left or some link on the left, and then you want everything else on the right. How do you do that with Flexbox? Well, you can use margin just like you could in other situations. So this number 1 down here has a class called margin right auto. That's this number 1. So we're going to add margin right auto. And what that does is it's not super intuitive, but it does work, is when you have auto margin, it basically pushes the right, remember we said margin right auto, it's going to push the other elements as far as it can to the right to give it the most amount of margin. That's the effect anyway. Yeah, so the effect is that you get one thing on the left and the rest are all on the right, which is awesome sauce, right? I think that's pretty cool, actually. So it's an easy way to kind of do that kind of thing. And of course, if I could do it the other direction if I wanted to. I could put margin left auto on number 5, and then it would push everything over this way, and then the 5 would be on the right. So that is another, you can do it both directions if you want. Okay, so I think that's it for this one. A little bit shorter. Hopefully you guys appreciate that. I know everybody loves super long videos, but this one is a little bit shorter. Sorry about that. But I think that's it for this one, and I will talk to you again later.